Schools are built for the times. As the times continually change, education should too. Here are 6 ways schools arguably must change to meet changing cultural needs and technological capabilities. Ready? Here we go. According to Smart Statistics Search Engine Stats, for 2018, people perform an estimated 1.2 trillion internet searches online, and that's just on Google. Close to 47% of the world's population is connected to the internet, with those numbers fully expected to rise in coming years. What does all of this mean for schools? I'd argue that it means everything for how we think about teaching and learning. It means that teachers, once the primary dispensers of knowledge, can no longer think of themselves as the smartest resources in the room. And it isn't just the internet, though that helps. Students can get information in all sorts of ways, from reading books to conversing with peers. Teachers may have a ton of value, but maybe today their value lies more in helping students connect with and process information than in being the primary sources of information. Let's take this a step further. What does this mean for classrooms? It means that they should be what I like to call debottlenecked. Think of how most classrooms are set up. The teacher stands, for most of the time, in the front of the class, and their job is largely to dispense information and direct the class's activity. If you want to talk, you raise your hand, and then the teacher answers your question. The teacher tells you what to work on, as well as when and how to work on it. The teacher, in other words, is the bottleneck of the class. Everything goes through them, and the information flows mostly one way, from teacher to student. Because there are so many ways to get information, today's classrooms should be debottlenecked. Instead of information flowing one way, from teacher to student, it should flow all sorts of ways, from teacher to student, student to teacher, student to student, and back again. In their book, New Culture of Learning, John Seeley Brown and Douglas Thomas call this learning in the collective. Anyone who knows something or can help should be able to connect to others that they can share with. Maybe a teacher's role should be more about showing people how to connect to resources and empowering them to do so, more than being the sage on the stage. Nor do students necessarily need to work at the same pace. Think about it. For most of school's existence, instruction needed to be structured so that large groups of students were learning at any given time from a single teacher. The best way to do that is certainly to make sure that all kids are going at a single pace, the pace of the teacher's instruction. And the best way to formalize that was to write a curriculum that sets the pace that every student is to follow. Replace the need for all students to learn from a single teacher and you undo, literally, the rationale for that paced curriculum. That is, all kids are now free to go through any curriculum at their own pace. Some students may need to spend more time on something than others breeze through, and that group might in turn breeze through something that baffles another group. But as long as the instruction is not coming from one teacher and is coming from sources that are customizable to individual student need, this difference in pace is no longer a problem. Taken at its most extreme, the ability to customize to fit students' needs could even undo the entire rationale for separating instruction in classrooms by grade level, centered as it is on the idea that everyone is supposed to progress at the same rate. Do students all even need to learn the same things? Allow me to say something admittedly controversial. I'm no longer convinced, as I once was, that they do. I think the idea used to have appeal for reasons that no longer culturally fit. It used to be that experts picked out all the things students believed everyone would need once they were out of school, what I call just-in-case knowledge. But people live all kinds of different lives, and it's really hard to predict what skills and information any given life will or won't need. Second, if there is something I find I need to know, it's easier for me than ever to learn it when I need it. Just a few weeks ago, actually, I needed to find out a math formula that I surely learned in high school. I was able to find it on the internet within a matter of minutes. Other students, whether they remembered or forgot that formula, may or may not live lives that go on to require it. We just don't live standardized lives, so in an age where learn it when you need it is easier than ever, maybe schools should be places where we're able to practice learning what we need when we become interested, and not where experts predict and present what we'll all need to know in the future. Next, school's main job should be in helping students learn how to learn. We may not know what types of facts and skills all people need to know when they graduate and live their diverse lives, but we can be pretty sure that there's one skill they will need, and that's being able to learn. See, schools are generally organized on the idea that they're equipping students by preparing them with the knowledge that they'll need later. But even if we could realistically predict the skills anyone would need when they graduate, even most of that information will change. What prepares people is being fluent, knowing how to learn when they need to identify what they need to know, how to find resources, and to learn. I would argue that this is the opposite of what schools today teach, which is usually more about how to listen to authority figures and jump through the hoops that they set. And note, I didn't say that schools should teach students how to learn. That would fall into the school trap, where learning can only come from going through lessons structured by the curriculum and teacher. No, schools should help students learn how to learn. How? By getting students used to having to learn without the information coming from the teacher. There are lots of resources around us that can help us learn, so maybe the teacher's job should be to coach students in how to leverage those resources, rather than telling them which ones to use and being the primary resource themselves. And maybe what is being learned is less important than practicing how to learn. Lastly, I wonder if we're getting to a point where we should rethink the very idea of school as a place. Today you go to school, this place that is apart from other places in order to learn. But given that there are so many resources that we can learn from anywhere, could it be that students learn a lot of things in a lot of different places? This is what Ivan Illich imagined in his classic work, Deschooling Society. Illich imagined a world where anyone with some knowledge to share could share it with anyone who wanted to receive it. Some might choose to go to a conventional school that could offer a lot of information and learning all in one convenient place, sure. But others might choose to learn one thing from one teacher, another thing from a peer group, another from a family or community member, etc. And he was writing this in 1971, decades before the internet and electronic communication made this idea even more possible. Maybe it's time to rethink the idea that any person's education needs to be gotten from this one physical place called school. Schools are built for the times, and as the times change, the way we educate in them should change too. I've been deliberately vague about solutions here for a reason. I have my favorites, of course, but what I prefer is only what I prefer. We need innovative people to continually innovate and think of new forms of education best suited for the times. What I know is that schools need to change. It's up to all of us to figure out how.